Back to NBA Today, presented by Hotels.com. So let's shift up to Boston, where the Celtics evened the series last night, and the lobster rolls are delicious. There is Jaylen Brown. He was there, Jeff, did you hear this? 3 hours before tip-off, and then it yielded this. I'm sorry, Grayson, we're showing it again. We really are.
Sometimes you got to get your mind right. Sometimes you got to get your mind right. A lot of times, playoffs, you might have family in town. You might have this. You might have that. I'm going to get there, get to work, and these are the results of that work.
He dropped him like that potato was so hot, and then he did this over Giannis.
Yo, he was balling.
Yeah. He was in his bag. He was in a gorilla. What scares me about how great he was playing, you kept seeing him grab his hamstring, and I hope that's not going to come up to bite him, so to speak, at some point in this series.
It didn't look like it bit him on that play. The Celtics roll 109-86. And get this, the Celtics, they've taken more threes than twos in each of the first two games of this series after having never done that in a playoff game in franchise history. So they lived by the three in game two. They made 20 of them while shooting better than 46% from distance, but died by the three. Game one, they hit just 36% of them. So game two, that was their savior. Game one, not so much. But it was an incredible bounce-back performance from the Celtics, and a reminder that their star Jaylen Brown will join us in just about 15 minutes. But gentlemen, we have to start with the graphic that we just showed on Boston's threes, because Matt, I want to start with you here. We were talking about this in the break. Is that style a sustainable plan for the Celtics if they want to win this series?
Well, the sweet spot last round for them was about 35 threes to get a game per Brooklyn, and that's, they swept through them. I think what the thing was in the first game is the Bucks were the more physical team, and that had the Celtics on their heels and no rhythm, and they were forcing up a bunch of threes. Game two, Boston came and met that physicality and were getting downhill, getting to the mid-range, so then they were more in rhythm with their three-point shots. So I still think that sweet spot's probably around 40, 35, 40. 50 might be a lot, but again, I think if they meet their physicality, they're going to get in more rhythm so that when they're shooting these three-point shots, they may not have another hot shooting night like they did, but they'll be more consistent with their three-point shots.
Well, and let's take a second here. Let's not, go crazy. 36% is really good if you're shooting that percentage of threes. That is really good for that amount. That's, again, I don't know what the equivalent it is, but let's put it in perspective. The Golden State Warriors lost by 5, and they shot 18% from three, 7 for 39. So, for me, I look at this team. Is that the formula? Yes. But I also want to credit their defense, their adjustments that they made on Giannis, making it so much more difficult. And Giannis, as series progress, with no Chris Middleton, you limit your options for Giannis. Chris Middleton is one of the best pick and roll guys that they have. So what they did more in the second half is they more put him as a screener and allow him to roll, then toss in the ball. Drew Holiday is a very good pick and roll player. But after that, you start to get very average with how they play their game because they just have floor spacers. So for me, that's where it struggles without Chris Middleton. You are limited the options. But I think to see Giannis more as a screener and as a roller, because you got to pull in when Giannis is rolling, or if he gets that ball, that will open up more threes for the Milwaukee Bucks. But ultimately, the Boston Celtics are the better team without Chris Middleton.
Okay, Perk?
You know what? Everything that Matt and RJ was saying is the gospel, and I have no argument. I actually agree with them on everything that they said. You know what? I want to credit Ime Udoka, right? Because he's the guy that gets this team prepared every time they have to face adversity. Like we talk about in the regular season at one point when they was 23 and 25. Ime Udoka called out Jason Tatum, called out Jaylen Brown, had to come into Jesus meeting. All of a sudden, their season turned around. They got punched in the mouth game one. All of a sudden, you see that type of physicality they came with on the defensive end. You saw that dog mentality. That's a reflection of your coach. That's a reflection of your coach going into the film room after game one and not being friendly with you. And so when I see Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum come out with that tenacity, you see Jaylen Brown arriving at the game 3 hours before time because he has it on his mind. That's all Ime Udoka. And I just want to give him a lot of credit because I think of all the coaches that's around the league, he flies under the radar because so many coaches are doing a great job, but he is doing an outstanding job how he's getting those guys to respond.
Well, then on the flip side of that, now it goes on the team that just got blown out to make adjustments. We saw Ime Udoka do that from game one to game two. Matt, we were just talking about it. When Bud was on the hot seat, Mike Budenholzer, what was the knock on him?
In-game adjustments.
So let's see how he now responds, because now the ball's in his court of what he is going to do with this Milwaukee Bucks team for a Game 3 on Saturday on E.
And we spoke on that early in the season. We haven't talked about it as much, but he can have an off shooting night and still have 15 to 17 free throws.
Stand here and I'm going to show you something. This is the issue. Stand right there. So this is the issue. James Harden, when he's got all of his handle, you still have to be close to him because you're afraid of the deep three. And so now that handle, you're going left and right, and he gets to dance with you because you have to be close. But when he is shooting 32% from three, 36% from three, now you can give him a little bit more space. So all that dancing that he does, you can absorb it. You can absorb it far more. And so that's the issue. The reason why I think James wanted to come play with Joel Embiid is because he needs Joel Embiid. The same way LeBron James needed Anthony Davis. The way these star players need other star players. He's at a space in his career where I don't know if it's a complete decline, like you said. It could be still hampered, but he went from 36 to 34 to 25 to 22, and it's looking like it's starting to progress in that wrong direction because he doesn't have the star player next to him. So that puts more emphasis on one-on-one, which we haven't seen that one-on-one really in years.
But again, also keep in mind, as great a scorer as he is, he's had plenty of off shooting nights like everyone else has, but he would also get 15 to 17 points from the free throw line and still end up with 28 to 35 points.
Yeah.
So.
I think JJ said something insightful earlier on First Take, which is that we have to start evaluating the.
Saw that with Grayson Allen and Alex Caruso. That probably would have just been a flagrant 2 in the season. There probably would not have been a one-game suspension until the next day when Alex Caruso, when they found out he had a fractured wrist. So I think probably you're very much looking at a one-game suspension. One thing in Dillon Brooks' favor, that this happened so early in the game, that last night almost becomes a suspension in itself because he was out, missed 3.5 quarters of the game. Perhaps that keeps it from being 2 games, but I think he's probably going to at least miss a game, especially given that there was a significant injury suffered by Peyton.
I see you, Matt, and RJ shaking your heads. Richard, what are you thinking about all this?
I hear what Woj is saying. I don't care if it was 1 second in the game or 1 second left to go in the game. That type of stuff is inexcusable, mainly because his season is potentially over. So I just, for me personally, as a player, you don't want to see that happen. But this, for people that have said it's like, oh, well, that was basically like a suspension. I feel like it was. He was already out, but I just feel like that is too much. And when you look at it, any player, doesn't matter, an important player, if it's an all-star, if it's an MVP, whatever it is, any player you put in that position with that type of injury, 1 second to go in the game or 1 second starting that game, it doesn't matter.
Frankly, it's hard to keep watching that video over and over of him going down. Matt, for those of us who didn't play in the league, can you just explain briefly the code that Kerr is referring to and whether or not you believe it was broken?
I think it was broken, and this is coming from someone who've had a long list of flagrant fouls and flagrant 2.
Appreciate you taking that responsibility.
I think that we have a responsibility, as Coach Kerr mentioned. This guy, obviously, Dillon Brooks was trying to make a hustle play, and I like him. He's the guy that brings the toughness and the edge outside of Ja to that team. But you could see if you watch the whole play, he's sprinting as hard as he could, and then he just kind of takes a windmill shot at the head. And RJ will tell you, he was a real high flyer. You are your most vulnerable once you're up in the air. You have no control over anything except hopefully getting to that rim and holding on the rim so you don't fall off the rim. So the way he swung and the way that GP came down, very unfortunate situation. And then again, like I said, I was someone who had these type, not this kind, but had flagrant 2s. But again, there's a responsibility we have to each other. If you can't go vertical and meet him with your body, a windmill swing at someone's head when he's going full speed into a dunk is a great way to hurt somebody.
Perk, your reaction here.
I'm with RJ. I'm with everybody on the panel. I think that Dillon Brooks should be suspended for Game 3 and possibly Game 4. Look, you have to clean this up. Look, we talking about people saying we don't know if he did it intentionally. He fouled him on purpose, and he did it with intentions. Okay, let's get that out the way. Here's the thing that we have to. Looking at the play,
you can't look at a person. Yeah, but you're making an assumption.
Yes, you can.
You can't look at a person and know what their intent was. It was a dangerous play, regardless. But you can't. Okay, I didn't realize we had a bunch of mind readers on the panel. Perk, please continue.
Okay. So here's the thing, right? As former players, including myself, especially guys that former players that are in the media and have a voice. We have to do a better job of stop with that. The league is getting soft. The league needs to toughen up. This is the playoff type talk because guys are actually listening to us. And I'm talking about guys that are playing. And so it's a way to be physical without doing ignorant things, right? You look at the Miami Heat, they play physical.